The National Federation of the Blind presents Braille, Unlocking the Code. Braille. According to Merriam-Webster, it is a system of writing for the blind that uses characters made up of raised dots. According to the blind, it is the single most important invention for the blind in history, a primary source of independence.
Well, I first learned Braille, I was 7 and a half. And I remember specifically thinking to myself, being in school with regular kids who were reading, print, and just realizing that it was going to be essential if I was going to keep up with them, that I needed a way to read as well.
I was a young kid, and I wanted Braille. I wanted the Braille because it's a liberating thing to have. It lets you learn about what you don't know. It lets you explore the world. It lets you imagine what has never been in your mind before. It lets you travel to different countries. It lets you meet new people, and it all has to do with these little symbols on this page.
If I had to use large print, I think I'd be behind everyone else. Braille is so much easier. I don't have to strain my eyes to read anything.
Braille gives the blind child the same benefits that a sighted child gets using reading print. We want our children to read. So Braille gives us another tool that we can use to get at that information. We need that tool. Without it, we're kind of limited, and without it, we'll never be able to be all we could be if we don't have Braille.
Louis Braille developed the Braille code when he was a student at the Royal Institution for Blind Youth in France. At the time, the only way for blind children to read was with a system of raised print letters, which was very slow, and there was no way for the blind to write. In 1821, a captain in the French army visited the school and shared his invention of night writing, a code of 12 raised dots and a number of dashes corresponding to sounds. That same year, Louis Braille began to devise Braille, changing the code to 6 dots rather than the more difficult 12-dot system. He completed the code in 1824. His 6-dot system corresponded to letters rather than sounds, and relied on patterns and logic to make it easy to learn. And for the first time ever, the blind had a way to both read and write. Despite the advantages of the Braille system, the code was met with opposition.
Louis Braille invented the Braille system in the 1820s. When he died in 1852, Braille had not been adopted as the reading method for the blind in his own country of France. It was only adopted later. In the United States, Braille was not adopted as the reading system for the blind until the 1930s.
Once Braille was recognized as the system of reading and writing for the blind, there was an explosion of teaching the code to blind students. In residential schools for the blind, Braille was part of the curriculum for both the totally blind and the low vision students. However, after World War II, Braille instruction suffered a terrible decline. By 1968, only about 44% of blind students knew the Braille code. Today, according to federal statistics, the number of blind students learning Braille hovers at about 10%. Yet 80% of blind individuals who are gainfully employed know and use Braille in their daily lives. The benefits of learning Braille are obvious, so why is the number of blind children learning the system still so low? There are many commonly held myths and misconceptions regarding Braille that contribute to the low Braille literacy rate. The first is that Braille is difficult to learn.
I hear all the time people saying things like, Braille is very slow, Braille is very difficult to learn, and so we can't teach it to children too young. I, in my time as a teacher and as a consultant, have worked with many, many young blind children. And it's the quality of teaching that they receive and the enthusiasm that the teachers have for Braille that influences the children, and it's also the amount and time of exposure that children get, the amount of exposure and the time that they get each week, because of course the real truth is that we're not teaching Braille, we're teaching reading. And so often you will hear that a child is getting half an hour or an hour of Braille a week at age 5 or 6. Well, what of our sighted first graders or kindergarteners would be given an hour of reading time a week? Braille is not just a code that they're learning. Braille is reading. Braille is literacy.
For a child, learning to read is simply that, learning to read, regardless of the format. With proper Braille instruction, the blind child can master reading and writing in the same amount of time that the sighted child masters print. Learning to read and write Braille as an adult can be done in 6 months or less with proper instruction. The second myth is that Braille is slow and inefficient. However, those fluent in Braille can read at the rate of hundreds of words a minute and use it as fluently as their sighted colleagues use print in their daily lives.
Okay, that sounds great. I'll have her call you back.
I use Braille every day in my work. I am a research professor with San Diego State University. I teach seminars in public policy. Very often I have to refer to federal law and regulations. I have to lecture from notes. And Braille allows me to do this in a way that other instructors would do.
Finally, what of the argument that Braille is becoming obsolete with the advent of technology and the availability of audio material?
There's nothing wrong with the speech programs and all of the wonderful technologies that we have, but there's never going to be a replacement for reading something for yourself and interpreting it in your own way to build whatever life you want.
I grew up listening to books on tape, so when I actually was introduced to Braille, I didn't know how to spell. I had no clue. And so I failed every single one of my spelling tests. I got pulled back in the 4th grade. They pulled me back to the 3rd grade because I didn't know how to spell. And they thought, oh, it's because you're blind. No, it's because I was given books on tape to listen to and nothing else.
Children who listen to learn are not taught proper spelling, punctuation, and syntax. In addition, while listening, a person is not actively engaging in the material being taught. Listening is not literacy. In addition to the myths and misconceptions, lack of access to Braille materials and proper instruction also contribute to the lack of Braille literacy in the United States.
There is a major problem in this country with blind children having access to not only Braille books, but to instruction in reading and writing Braille. Any sighted child in this country has access to teachers every day to teach them reading and writing. And we know if those teachers are certified, we can at least be sure that those teachers know how to read and write in English. They can read, print, and write grammatically correct English. If a teacher can't perform those basic duties, they don't become certified. With Braille, unfortunately, that's not the case. Across this country, there's an epidemic that's occurred for many years where the vast majority of teachers who are trained to teach blind children to read and write Braille themselves cannot read and write Braille on a competent level. And the end result is we see time and time and time again that blind children are not being taught to read and write Braille, and the reason is because the teachers themselves don't know the Braille and as a result won't teach the Braille.
So what is being done to battle the lack of Braille competency among teachers of blind students? Put simply, the National Certification in Literary Braille. This test, developed with the help of the National Federation of the Blind and others, is being administered by the National Blindness Professional Certification Board and came to market at the beginning of 2008. The board expects the test to be a national standard in the next 5 years and requires teachers to recertify every 5 years to maintain their competency in the Braille code.
The dearth of individuals who are competent in Braille is so profound that we have to make sure that people are competent and remain competent. Braille is like any other skill. If you don't use it, you lose it. To remain certified as a professional, you have to continually demonstrate that you remain current in the skill set which you're hired to teach. And that is the purpose of the NCLB, to ensure that individuals are competent and qualified at the time they take the test and that they remain competent throughout their professional career.
Many believe that advances in technology are making Braille obsolete, an assertion that we've shown to be false. Technology cannot replace actively reading and writing, actively learning. However, technology has made access to Braille easier than it has ever been before.
Technology and Braille go together like little boys and bubblegum. Braille displays, note takers, you can download a whole book into a note taker and be on the airplane reading the book on your note taker, or you can take it with you anywhere you go. It makes it much more portable.
We love technology because it offers a promise of getting at things faster and more easily than before. In the past, in order to get a piece of Braille, somebody had to write it by hand, or it had to be put onto a press, and that press was extraordinarily expensive. Today, we can get individual sheets of Braille almost on demand.
Braille is much more available now than ever before. Yet the literacy crisis among blind children remains just that. In order to battle the crisis facing our blind children, the National Federation of the Blind launched its Braille Readers Are Leaders literacy campaign in the summer of 2008. Campaign goals include doubling the number of Braille readers in the United States by 2015.
In my life, the National Federation of the Blind has been the vehicle to show me that I could live a full and productive life. And the Braille Readers Are Leaders campaign is that message of hope that the Federation gives to blind people, the message that we are not limited so much by blindness as by low expectations. And the Braille Readers Are Leaders campaign captures that message that through literacy, through that vehicle of being able to read and write, we can do the things in life that other people do. We believe that Braille readers are leaders. We believe that literacy for blind people is something that is attainable.
Only 10% of blind students are being taught to read Braille in school. Yet the importance of Braille literacy cannot be denied.
How do you know that Braille is useful? Look at the people who are successful. The people who are successful and who are blind use techniques that have been developed that are effective for blind people, and Braille is one of the most important of them. If we are to achieve a greater level of Braille literacy, we must find a way to get people to believe, especially those in education of blind people, to believe in the blind, to believe in the capacity that blind people have.
Braille readers are leaders, and they are leaders because they're literate and they have the skill set to compete on terms of equality with the rest of their peers. Those who don't have that skill set of Braille struggle not only in basic reading and writing, but in all of the more complex areas of literacy that are built upon those foundational skill sets. You cannot underestimate the importance of the foundations of Braille reading and writing. It's every bit as important as a sighted child learning the alphabet.
Our sighted kids look around and see print words everywhere all the time, from the time they open their eyes, and we need to give similar access. There needs to be more accessibility, more exposure, more Braille, more blind folks reading Braille.
Braille is beautiful.
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 Braille is not slow. Braille is not difficult. Braille is a form of reading and writing for children who cannot use print. Braille is the answer to success if you cannot read print. I was a Braille reader at age 5, and I read Braille today. And Braille is beautiful.
We have a saying in the National Federation of the Blind, we believe that Braille is beautiful, and we believe that the blind people who use it well are part of the beauty. We also know that those who can use Braille with efficiency become leaders. Consequently, we say, Braille readers are leaders. Join us in supporting Braille literacy.
For more information regarding Braille and the NFB's Braille Readers Are Leaders literacy campaign, please visit www.braille.org or call the National Federation of the Blind at 410-659-9314.